All right, welcome. Today we're doing something a bit different. A deep, almost forensic dive into a really complex theological text. We're going to be looking at a few key verses that bring up one of the biggest debates out there. Where does God's will end and our own choice begin? So let's just jump right in.
So this is where it all starts. This incredible exchange right from the Qur'an. You have Satan, right after his fall, making this absolutely staggering accusation to God's face. He says, "Because you have misled me." Just think about that for a second. That one line, it creates this huge theological problem, right? How can a God who is perfectly just also be the one who causes someone to go astray? That's the question we're really digging into today.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the verse and the covenant it implies. Then we're going to get into this idea of the duality of misguidance, which is key. After that, we'll talk about the path of guidance, the companions of the right and left, see how this all fits into the idea of a great test on earth, and finally, we'll tie it all together with divine will and human action.
All right, section 1, let's really lay out the foundational problem here. And like I said, it all circles back to what Satan said.
So here it is, the big question. When Satan says, "Because you have misled me," does that actually mean God is the source of initial misguidance? I mean, think about it. If God is perfectly just and all-powerful, how can he be the one who leads people astray? And if he is, well, how can any of us be held responsible for our choices? This is the contradiction that our source text tackles head-on.
And the argument from the source text is that, well, this is a profound misunderstanding. The key isn't some simple yes or no. Instead, the entire answer is hidden in the nuance of one specific word, equa, or misguidance. There are actually two types.
And that brings us right to our second section, which is all about this duality of misguidance or igwa. Seriously, according to the text we're analyzing, if you can grasp this one concept, the whole puzzle starts to make sense. Okay, so let's define our terms. The word is igwa. It's the Arabic term for misguidance, seduction, leading someone astray. But the source is really clear on this. This isn't just one monolithic idea. It actually comes in two very distinct forms, and confusing the two is where all the trouble starts.
So, on the one hand, you have what the text calls initial misguidance, ihwa ibtida'i. This is the idea of leading someone astray right from the get-go, with no action on their part. The source says, nope, that's incompatible with divine justice. Can't happen. But then, on the other hand, you have punitive misguidance, ihwa kefari, and this is completely different. This kind of misguidance is a consequence or a punishment that happens after a person has already made a deliberate choice to reject the truth. So it's not a starting point, it's a result. And the text argues that this is the only kind of misguidance Satan can actually carry out, and it's only allowed by God because of a person's own choice.
And the text is really explicit about this. It completely refutes the idea that God, or even Satan, can be responsible for that initial misguidance. Think of it this way. Satan can't just kick down the door to your soul. He has to be invited in, or at least find a door that's been left unlocked by your own choices.
Yeah, the source gives us this direct quote. The essence of Satan Iblis does not possess the attribute of initial misguidance, but rather punitive misguidance is attributed to him. So when Satan says, "You have misled me," he's essentially lying, or at least speaking from a place of pure arrogance. The reality, according to this analysis, is that his power is only a consequence. It's a punitive misguidance that's only allowed for people who have already chosen to turn away. He's a result, not a cause.
Okay, so if that's misguidance, what's the flip side? Let's move on to section 3 and talk about the path of guidance, or huda. Huda is divine guidance, but it's not something that's forced on you. The source presents it as a mercy, an option that's out there for everyone. The catch? It has to be accepted. It all comes down to free will. You can choose to accept this guidance, and that takes you down one road, or you can reject it. And that's what opens the door to that punitive misguidance we were just talking about.
So what's Satan's game plan? He says he's going to sit in wait on the straight path. Now, the analysis here is absolutely crucial. Notice he doesn't say he's going to block the path. He can't. He just sits on the sidelines and creates diversions. He comes at people from 4 symbolic directions. From the front, messing with their view of the hereafter. From behind, making them obsessed with this world. From the right, trying to corrupt their good deeds. And from the left, with just open, blatant invitations to sin.
And this is fascinating. The source brings up this concept of a Qur'an. It's like a personal companion or associate. But this companion is a devil, and it gets assigned to someone who consistently turns away from God. Its job is to make that misguidance seem even more attractive. But again, look at the cause and effect. The Qur'an shows up after the choice is made. It's a consequence, not the cause. It's almost like a supernatural echo chamber, just constantly reinforcing the bad choices you've already decided to make. So we just mentioned how Satan attacks from the right and left. Let's dive deeper into that, because in this context, these aren't just directions. They're incredibly powerful symbols for the ultimate outcomes of our choices. And to really get this, the source text does this incredibly detailed breakdown of the term yamin, which means right. It goes into the etymology, the theology, the whole thing, to give us a complete picture. So, the path of the right, or ashab al-yamin, these are the successful ones. The word yamin itself symbolizes blessing, good fortune, strength. These are the people who get their book of deeds in their right hand on Judgment Day. So, when Satan attacks from the right, it's not obvious, it's subtle. He's not tempting them with blatant evil. He's trying to corrupt their goodness, turning piety into pride, making blessings a reason to forget God. And then you have the complete opposite, the left, which symbolizes misfortune and weakness. Right, the path of the left, ashab al-shimal. The word itself, shimal, is tied to ill omens and wretchedness. These are the companions of the fire. And the attack from this side, it's not subtle at all. It's just a straight-up, open invitation to sin and chase after worldly pleasures.
Okay, so this brings us to a really difficult part of the discussion, what the source calls the Great Terrestrial Test. Because this whole framework of choice, it seems to bump up against another huge concept, predestination, right? How can we have free will if some verses seem to say our fate is already sealed?
And here's a perfect example, a verse that's really challenging. And we have certainly created for hell many of the jinn and mankind. They have hearts with which they do not understand, and so on. I mean, on the surface, that sounds pretty final, doesn't it? It sounds like some people are just created for hell, period. So you have to ask, right? Does this verse mean God literally creates people just to send them to hell? Does that just cancel out everything we've talked about with free will? Let's see how the source text deals with this. The source breaks it down into a really clear causal chain. Step 1 is endowment. God gives everyone the tools they need for guidance, a heart to understand, eyes to see, ears to hear. Step 2 is choice. A person chooses to ignore and neglect those tools. Step 3 is consequence. The natural, inevitable end of that path of neglect is hell. So, here's the conclusion. The verse is describing the outcome of a choice, not a predetermined fate. The source even points to the Arabic. The word for in for hell indicates a result, a consequence, not an initial purpose. So it's not that they were created for hell, it's that their choices led to hell. And the source frames all of this within the bigger story of humanity. This life on Earth, ever since Adam's descent, is the arena for this test. It's the place where we all have to make that choice between obedience and disobedience. Okay, let's bring this all home, our final section. Divine will and human action. Let's see how all these pieces fit together. According to the source, the whole thing is built on the nature of the human soul, or the nafs. It's created with this built-in duality. It has the capacity for both taqwa, which is righteousness, and fujur, which is wickedness. It's born with the potential for both, and the choice of which one to develop, well, that's entirely up to us. And this verse here really drives the point home. He will not be questioned about what he does, but they will be questioned. It lays out this clear line of accountability. Ultimately, we are the ones who have to answer for our actions. The responsibility is on us. So, what are the big takeaways on justice and action from all this? First, and most importantly, we are fully responsible for our choices. Second, reward and punishment are direct consequences of what we do. Third, God's justice is perfect. No one is stuck with a fate they didn't, through their own actions, choose. And it's interesting. The source even mentions that the effects of our actions can continue even after we're gone, impacting our final outcome. And that leaves us with a pretty heavy final thought to consider. If misguidance is only a consequence of us rejecting the truth, if it's not something predetermined, then what does that reveal about the profound responsibility we have in every single choice we make? It means the power and the weight of that responsibility is right here with us.